There's a particular kind of tranquility that settles over a neighborhood at dusk. It's the hour when the sun dips below the horizon, casting a dim glow over the manicured lawns and perfectly spaced homes. In those few moments, before the streetlights flicker to life, the world seems to hold its breath, suspended in a gentle calm. I treasured these moments on my front porch, nestled in a weathered rocking chair with a book in one hand and a cup of tea cooling in the other. The gentle creak of the chair matched the rhythmic rustle of leaves, whispering secrets only the dying day could understand. Yet even this peaceful ritual could not remain untouched by the invisible hand of the Homeowners Association, embodied by Karen, the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood propriety. Karen's presence was a constant, buzzing reminder of the HOA's reach. Her voice was like the persistent hum of a refrigerator, easily ignored at first but grating when you truly paid attention. She had an uncanny ability to detect the slightest deviations from her idea of order. Like a hawk spotting a mouse from miles above, she could sense the smallest nonconformity. Her first strike was subtle. A mere note slipped under my door. The handwriting was meticulous, each letter carved with a precision that suggested an underlying tension. My porch light, she declared, was a source of light pollution. An absurd notion, really, considering it was a single bulb, casting a warm, inviting glow over the threshold. It was hardly a beacon sending distress signals into the night sky. I chuckled softly, tucking the note into my book as a makeshift bookmark. Her complaint seemed like an exaggerated attempt at control, as if she believed herself the curator of some suburban art gallery, where each home was an exhibit to be curated and criticized. With quiet defiance, I decided to leave the bulb unchanged. It was a small act of rebellion, the kind that felt almost too insignificant to matter, yet carried a satisfying weight. I reveled in the simplicity of it, the unchanged bulb a silent testament to my unwillingness to bend to her will. Days passed, the rhythm of life undisturbed, until the evening her frustrations bubbled over in a dramatic crescendo. The wail of sirens pierced the evening's gentle silence, a discordant symphony that shattered the peace like a rock through a pane of glass. Blue and red lights painted the street in garish hues, an uninvited spectacle that drew curious eyes out from behind curtains. The officers were kind, if not slightly bemused. Karen was animated, gesturing with the fervor of someone convinced of their own righteousness. Her voice rose and fell in waves as she explained the light pollution wrought by my solitary bulb. It was as if she believed the light to be a signal fire, threatening to disrupt the entire neighborhood's equilibrium. I watched from my porch, a quiet observer to this strange theater. Her words tumbled out like jagged stones, clashing with the calm authority of the officers who nodded, listened, and ultimately rendered the scene absurd by their very presence. In the end, there was nothing to cite, nothing to charge. Just an officer's shrug, a nod in my direction, and the quiet return of normalcy. Karen retreated, a reluctant specter, her indignation trailing behind her like a long shadow. I remained on the porch long after the sirens had vanished into the distance. The night settled once more in its gentle embrace. The bulb glowed steadfastly above me, a small beacon of resistance against the onward march of Karen's crusade. In that light, I found a newfound resolve, a determination to hold my ground against the encroaching tide of petty tyranny. The moon hung low, a sly conspirator in the night sky, as Karen's shadow crept closer to my doorstep. Her presence was unmistakable, a silhouette sharpened by righteousness and the flickering porch light that had become the latest battleground. Her resolve seemed carved into the darkness, like some relentless force of suburban nature. Days had passed since the 911 call, but the echoes lingered like a sour aftertaste. The incident had morphed into a neighborhood myth, whispered and embellished over garden fences and at book club gatherings. Karen's indignation was now legend, an absurd but palpable presence within our little enclave of manicured lawns and matching mailboxes. Her next move came not with the crash of cymbals, but with the quiet rustle of paper sliding under my door. A missive of mischief and judgment, clad in the formal attire of an official HOA citation. Excessive illumination, it read, a detriment to community tranquility. The words were a tapestry of officiousness, woven with threads of her escalating campaign. Karen wasn't one for half measures. Her power was not legal, but social, an unspoken influence that seeped into every crack and crevice like water finding its way through stone. Absurd rules began to sprout like weeds in the HOA guidelines. The symmetry of holiday decorations, the quietude of wind chimes, even the hues of garden gnomes, all were scrutinized under her watchful eye. I imagined her sitting by her window, curtains slightly parted, the glow of her laptop illuminating her face as she drafted her mandates. Each rule was a brick in the wall she built between us, a testament to her unwavering quest for order, as she saw it. It was control masquerading as concern, a dance of shadows and light on the stage of our shared community. But the irony was not lost on me. Her crusade against light pollution seemed blind to the bonfire of gossip she ignited. Whispers danced on the breeze like dandelion seeds, spreading tales of porch light skirmishes and the peculiar power struggle that ensued. The air was thick with speculation and stories, each more exaggerated than the last. Yet, in this theater of absurdity, I found a strange kind of strength. Karen's fervor had painted me as both villain and victim, a paradox that left me curiously unscathed. The absurdity of the situation became a cocoon of protection, buffering me from her pointed looks and clipped remarks. I pondered on power and its strange mechanics, how it ebbs and flows, invisible but ever-present like the unseen currents of a river. Karen wielded it like a sword, sharp and unyielding, while I preferred the quiet resilience of water, wearing down obstacles with steadfast patience. The days trickled into weeks, each marked by the silent tension that shimmered between us. The community thrummed with the hum of everyday life, seemingly oblivious to the undercurrent of our quiet conflict. But beneath the surface, I felt the rumble of change, a slow building momentum that promised to disrupt the status quo. Karen's world was one of certainty, of black and white, but life had always been painted in shades of gray. And in those shades I found my path forward, guided by the soft glow of my porch light, a beacon of defiance against the absurdity of it all. The stillness of the night was a blank canvas, broken only by the soft hum of crickets and the whispering leaves jittered by a teasing breeze. My porch light, a benign sentinel, cast its gentle glow across the pathway leading to my front door. The air was cool, crisp, with the scent of pine and potential. Yet beneath this serene facade simmered a tension as palpable as a static charge in the air before a storm. Karen's latest salvo, her call to 911, claiming my porch light was committing the crime of light pollution, was an escalation I hadn't anticipated. I felt the weight of her scrutiny like an oppressive shadow, always lurking, always poised to pounce. Her zealous dedication to the HOA's rigid rulebook was like a fortress built on a foundation of petty grievances and misplaced authority. But I had my own arsenal, and it was time to wield it with precision. I began by collecting evidence, a meticulous archive of the absurdity unleashed upon my solitary porch light. Every note she'd slipped under my door, each email brimming with exclamation points and veiled threats, I cataloged with the care of a lepidopterist pinning butterflies. My phone captured the scene outside, the ambient glow far from the glaring spotlight she painted in her narrative. The recordings were composed of calm objections, a symphony of reason against the cacophony of her claims. The night unfolded in a stream of consciousness, my mind a theater where scenes played out in multiple acts. Karen, in her fervor, was blind to the irony of her actions, a self-appointed guardian of peace disturbing the tranquility she so vehemently defended. Her obsession was a lens through which the world twisted, a funhouse mirror reflecting only what she chose to see. I spent evenings crafting my counter, weaving words into a tapestry of polite firmness. I was not striking back, but rather building a bridge of understanding she seemed incapable of crossing. My letters were exercises in diplomacy, draped in the garb of neighborly concern, yet fortified with the steely resolve of someone who refused to be a pawn in her game. Finally, I delivered my rebuttal, like a chess player moving a decisive piece with quiet confidence. Each sentence was a measured step, inviting her to see beyond her narrow confines, to glimpse the simple truth. My porch light was no villain. The document was not a declaration of war, but a gentle reminder of reason, a lighthouse in her storm of indignation. As the days passed, a quiet transformation took place. Karen's ire, once a roaring river, began to ebb. Perhaps it was the realization that her crusade was a quixotic endeavor, tilting at windmills conjured by her own imagination. Or maybe, just maybe, my counter had planted a seed of doubt in the fertile ground of her convictions. In the end, the resolution was as subtle as the problem had been grandiose. The porch light remained, steadfast and unchanged, a beacon of sanity in our small suburban sea. Karen's silence was not an admission of defeat, but an acknowledgement of the equilibrium restored. Our neighborhood settled back into its gentle rhythms, the harmony of coexistence a soothing balm over past discord. And as I stood on my porch one evening, the light casting its familiar glow, I felt a quiet triumph. Not the boisterous fanfare of victory, but the serene satisfaction of having navigated the storm with dignity and tact. In the end, I had found a way to shine through the darkness, not by extinguishing it, but by simply standing firm, illuminating the path with a light that was never too bright, but just right. The morning light filtered through the blinds, a soft consolation after the storm. It was the kind of peace that follows upheaval, a deceptive calm. I sipped my coffee, savoring the quiet solitude, the warmth spreading through my chest. The calm before the next storm. Karen was relentless, after all. A police officer had knocked on my door the night before, gruff and apologetic. There were rising complaints of light pollution, he'd said, his words heavy with disbelief. I'd known immediately it was Karen's doing. Her vendetta against my porch light was as bright and unyielding as the bulb itself. My porch light, a beacon of defiance in the dark suburban sea. To Karen, it was a spotlight on her perceived imperfections, her need for control threatened by a single bulb. She wielded the HOA rules like a sword, guarding her domain with bureaucratic zeal. But I had my own plans, quiet as an approaching dawn. I set my mug down, the cool ceramic against my skin a grounding reminder. It was time for action. Not a roar, but a whisper. A legal movement that would slide beneath her radar, silent and sure. I pulled out the file, its contents a carefully curated arsenal of bylaws and municipal codes. I'd spent weeks researching, navigating the labyrinth of regulations. There was power here, hidden among the mundane language of property rights and community standards, words that, when aligned right, were sharper than any reprimand Karen could wield. My fingers brushed over the documents, tracing routes through potential legal battles. Each line, each clause, a stepping stone to peace, a path to reclaim my space, one where light could exist without fear of retribution. I smiled, the kind that tugs at the edges of resolve. It was ironic, really, how a simple light had become the axis of our conflict, a symbol of resistance. Karen saw it as an affront, a challenge to her reign. I saw it as liberation, a stand against her tyranny. I was determined to see it through, the light unwavering against her shadow. Later that day, I walked to the post office, documents tucked under my arm. The air was crisp, filled with that unmistakable autumn bite. Leaves crunched beneath my feet, a symphony of defiance echoing with each step. I mailed the letters, a quiet rebellion sealed with a stamp. Back home, I stood on the porch, the light warm against the encroaching dusk. It was a small thing, this light, but it held a power Karen underestimated, a reminder that not all battles are won with noise. Some victories are quiet, a steady glow against the night. There would be more rounds, more subtle skirmishes in this ongoing war, but I was ready to outlast her with patience and persistence. The light flickered on as the sun dipped below the horizon. It stood as a sentinel, a quiet promise of resistance. And so, as the stars emerged and the night settled in, I watched, watchful and waiting, knowing that in this long game, I had become the light. The morning after the incident, our street hummed with whispered conversations and a peculiar energy. The air was thick with the scent of last night's rain, and the pavement glistened like a stage freshly polished for a performance. Karen's latest stunt had left the neighborhood in a state of hushed expectancy, as though the climax of a long-anticipated play was finally upon us. I stepped onto my porch, the wooden boards creaking beneath my feet, still damp from the storm. My porch light, the humble protagonist of this drama, hung innocently above, casting a gentle glow in the gray morning. It had become a symbol now, a beacon against unsolicited authority. Neighbors gathered in clusters along the street, their faces a patchwork of amusement and disbelief. Karen had overstepped, even by her standards, and the community was waking up to the realization that her reign of trivial terror needed to be addressed. As I walked the length of my front yard, I couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of it all. A porch light, causing light pollution. If that was the worst of my crimes, then perhaps I was doing all right in the grand scheme of things. Her 911 call had been the crescendo of an orchestrated campaign against imagined slights, a testament to the pettiness that had become her trademark. The sky was a canvas of muted blues and grays, the sun still a shy guest behind the clouds. I noticed Mrs. Thompson from 2 houses down approaching. She had always been the quietly observant type, her sharp eyes missing little but her words measured like a jeweler weighing precious stones. Her nod was a silent acknowledgement, an unspoken alliance. Without uttering a word, she handed me a carefully folded piece of paper. The texture was crisp, the kind of stationery reserved for important matters. As I unfolded it, the neat rows of signatures greeted me. A petition, a collective voice, finally finding its sound. This was the turning point, the moment the community chose action over complacency. Karen had turned us into reluctant allies, and in doing so, she had sealed her own fate. The irony was as sweet as it was bitter. I looked up, the paper in my hand a tangible piece of our shared resolve. The wind tousled my hair, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and new beginnings. The neighborhood had found its voice, and it echoed in the rustle of leaves and the soft murmur of distant conversations. As I turned to re-enter my house, I caught one last glimpse of Karen peering through her blinds, her face a storm cloud of curiosity and disbelief. She had been sidelined, her theatrics losing their grip on the narrative she had so carefully crafted. The porch light flickered on behind me, a steadfast sentinel in the gathering dusk. It had weathered the storm, as had I, and together we were a testament to resilience in the face of unwarranted adversity. In the quiet of the morning, with the weight of the petition in my hand, I felt the community beginning to heal. The world moved on, as it always does, and the sun finally broke through the clouds, bathing the street in a warm, forgiving light.